Hey everybody, thank you again for joining. Today we actually have a very interesting personality with us today. It's basically, he has done a lot of work in the field of sustainability, but for last few years, he has been a part of a project called United Smart Cities. He has co-founded itself as well, and he is here in UAE with COP28. So let us dwell more what he has been up to. Hello, Christian. Hello. How are you? Nice. Thank you so much. Thank you for taking time out. So please tell us firstly about your profile and about yourself and what is it that you are being brought to here in UAE.
Okay. My name is Chris. I'm Norwegian. Half Norwegian at least. My mother's English.
Okay.
I'm based in Norway still. 2 children, family over there. And then most of my time I spend on cities and sustainable urban development in a nutshell. And I have been for the last almost 10 years.
You've also been within smart cities. You have been a part of a community called Learning Society. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, I think we share, a lot of us, a kind of common interest in cities and the question of resilience. And of course, resilience is also about embracing something that's open-ended. If you think about cities as a process of becoming a place, Dubai is constantly reshaping itself. My city of Trondheim is reshaping itself. So there's something driving that development. So if you want to think about that development in terms of sustainability or resilience, one way to conceptualize this is to think about the city as a learning system. So back in the day, I learned that individuals can learn. Right? We develop, we adapt to our environment. When I came to university, I also learned that organizations learn. We have a whole research that explores learning organizations. And recently, for the last at least 5 years, we've delved into the question of what is it that cities do or societies do by way of learning? Can you build cities more resilient by enabling them to learn and hence adapt and adjust and embrace emerging opportunities? So it's kind of that exploration of learning from the individual level through the organizational level and now at the societal level.
But how do you mobilize that kind of a learning around the entire city where you have, migrations coming, the expats coming, residents themselves are having cultural aspects of it, organizations that you talk about, they are also having their own curves around it. And then on top of all that thing, it's resilience as we talked about. How is it that they mitigate the risk of optimization of especially profits in this capitalistic world?
So I guess on the one side, there are some simple answers to that question. You would do like you're doing right now. You seek people out, you ask them what they're up to, you try to understand what they're saying. You might guess wrong a couple of times in the attempt, but that process of dialogue at the individual, at the collective level is key to this. Of course, if you want to then tackle as a learning process something as complex as the SDGs, you might want to tighten it up a little. So what we've been working on are basically the conditions and dimensions that can speed this process up. For example, when I started first working with cities like my own, it's about 200,000 people, so quite a bit smaller than Dubai. We asked ourselves, how can the city organization with the civil society, with local companies, with a big university come together and learn? And over the better part of 5 years, we ran large-scale experiments where we looked at the legal frameworks, where we looked at the need for new functions within these different organizations, where we looked at funding models, where we looked at the basis of this conversation unfolding, supported by data. So what we have been doing is both a shift in mindsets, informed by, let's say, a spirit of setting yourself up for learning, sharing ideas, listening, linking, and learning, as some of us would like to frame this. And then creating the systems all the way down to the technologies and access to the data that can inform and direct the conversation between people and organizations at the societal level. Assuming all the way that there are certain things that you can know at the individual level, like that doesn't necessarily make sense at the organizational and city level, and there are things cities might know. Okay. That doesn't make sense at the organizational and on the individual level, and especially within the context of the SDGs, you need to kind of embrace concepts like shared value, right? So you can look around a place like Dubai and you can see a lot of wealth, but then you drive out of the city center and you can see that the wealth isn't necessarily distributed evenly. So how do you kind of tackle this process of resilience and learning in ways that create maybe more equitable and hence more resilient?
And how to basically scale this opportunity that also not just within Dubai, but globally also it is coming up due to technology, perhaps, or due to other factors related to geopolitical situations, etc. However, going forward, what are your takeaways from COP28, and how do you plan to basically create synergy between Scandinavia and Dubai mainly?
So my working assumption that I try to practice wherever I go, although it's hard, time is limited, is still very much linked to these three L's that I already alluded to: listen, link, and learn. And I could kind of at length unpack each of them, but in the service of time, listening kind of boils down to a question of like, how do you cut through the noise, right?
Yeah.
There's so many impulses in a place like even huge conference, thousands of participants. Like, what are you listening for exactly? So we spent a lot of time on informing that dialogue through basically accommodating data. The second part is the linking. Again, it's in the simplest of terms, the spirit of engaging other people with a genuine intent to find common ground, to see if you have resources, I have resources, how can we combine these resources and do something that's more substantial that we can do on our own. And I think that's kind of where you're coming from as well, when you're trying to create some kind of community and resource platform. And then importantly, and that's great for all the good things happening here in Dubai at COP28, the world is not moving in the right direction. The data tells us otherwise. So there's a big need to learn through doing. So as this kind of virtuous cycle of listening and learning unfolds, it needs to translate into, okay, let's agree to do something tangible, right? And it's through that process of mutually grounded activities that we can begin to accumulate some shared experience with what actually happens when we put theoretical ideas into practice.
And perhaps convert to shared values from those.
Absolutely, because that's the point, right? That the mere process of listening, linking, and learning in this engaged, active way will also redirect what you're listening for,
right?
Who you're working with, and what you end up doing in the end. And this process, it can be very simple. You can do it with a couple of friends around the dinner table. It's more the spirit of how you engage other people and places. But then at the city level, and this is what we're doing here at COP, we're trying to frame this within the context of green industrial cities. So what are the basic tenets of this type of operating system, where you ultimately listen, link, and learn in ways that speak both to the needs of institutional investors and the emerging needs of local communities. And a lot of the time we see that this conversation breaks down. It takes too long. Our resources are not flowing from where they are to where they're needed. So you have this perpetual gap between, on the one side, a lot of capital floating around, and on the other side, lots of projects. But you need those projects that are investable, and then you need that capital that not just serves, of course, they have to serve the needs of of the capital owners, but they also have to serve the shared needs of those communities that are invested. And this is becoming increasingly important to manage at speed and scale.
Yes.
With the emergence of a green global economy, you're going to see, for example, across Africa, a resource extraction to power our solar panels or our batteries or our technologies more generally
For the globe.
for the globe. But you want to do this in a way that also serves the long-term resilience of those local communities and cities across Africa. So again, it's the same basic thinking template, but we're talking about at a scale and at a speed that's unprecedented.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of move beyond just the mindset and really begin to tap into what are the fundamentals, what are the building blocks of these cities that can speak to these two interests,
Right.
investors as well as the needs of emerging communities.
I mean, these frameworks that you've already prototyped and for him for the past few years, Mike. Going forward, we would definitely like to bring these frameworks here in Dubai, in Sharjah, in Abu Dhabi, in other Emirates, and then also scale it across the region as well with, emerging Saudi Arabia coming up and other regional places where this region is now sort of becoming a bit politically and socially stable as well. And hopefully we create this bridge going forward with your communities coming here in UAE, with capital flow from here, but also bring it towards these local communities you talked about. So for our audiences, tell us, how do you plan? What are the building blocks or what are the steps going forward as we are coming into the 2023 and it's just like 7 years left for our SDG goals to come up in a very brief way? How do you see, how do we go towards attaining somewhat near to our goals that we planned 7 years before at Paris Agreement?
I can tell you what we're doing, and I don't pretend to have all the answers. Right? This is a challenge that more smart people needs to kind of wrestle with moving forward. What I do know, though, and this is kind of an interesting parallel between my country and the Emirates. When my grandmother was born, these were countries that looked nothing like what they do today. Currently, I mean, that's across the span of her lifetime only, they've become some of the most wealthy countries in the world per capita, right? So we know a lot about how you can leverage resources and create genuinely prosperous countries. So part of the answer is also making sure you don't forget those templates that created that wealth in the first place, and continue working on those systems and institutions that actually prove themselves to be efficient. And then you can more analytically criticize and discuss the merits and where they went wrong. But part of the conversation needs to be predicated on leveraging that collective intelligence that brought us where we are in the first place. And it was really fast, right? Norway was at the level of Ghana 50 to 70 years ago today. Right? And now we're probably the richest country in the world.
There is a topic, argument that they've found oil also.
There is a topic, but that's the second interesting parallel between the Nordics and Dubai specifically.
Yeah, exactly.
Because both countries are moving out of oil at speed. So the energy needs in Norway, Norwegians, and I'm not dismissing the fact that Norway is selling oil and gas, but 95% of the energy in Norway comes from renewables.
Right.
That's a world leader in renewable energies. So for that resource that's been explored, it has been translated into a monumental transition.
Right.
And I think both countries, especially here in Dubai, recognize, going back to the learning perspective, that unless you invest in people, in knowledge, in education, basically in learning systems, you will not get there. So from our side and what we're trying to do within the context of the green industrial cities is basically move beyond that whole idea of special economic zones, right?
Right.
Where you could kind of create a sandbox where you dispense with the normal rules of kind of city or local community and bring in those aspects of a holistic approach that again, not only speak to the short-term interests of capital, but folds into them an operating system that heeds to the needs of those local communities. And the challenge so far is it's kind of been up to each location to kind of assess the goodness of this. Increasingly, and the EU here is leading the way. The ESG, so there are kind of risk discussions happening on the corporate side, is increasingly linked to the SDG discussions, the sustainable development discussions happening in local communities. This disconnect has lasted up until now. Now the big four, like the auditing companies, authorities, investors, are beginning to recognize and are also being imposed upon directives that compel them to assess the accountabilities and risks involved. That means they need data, they need knowledge on how to build this bridge, and they need the arenas. So if you think about the green industrial cities, there is something about this shift from special economic zones to green industrial cities that builds into the operating system from the ground up. Current access to intelligence, capacity to learn and align. It cannot be every company, every investor trying to figure out how to do what in Nigeria or in Trondheim or anywhere else. And you need to create these practical spaces, just like what you're kind of doing already, right? Here in Dubai, where people can connect at speed and scale. Again, this is in a nutshell what we're doing. We're trying to translate the idea of listening, linking, and learning, the spirit of learning societies, into an operating system that's legally, technologically, socially, and even financially, bringing together stakeholders and constraints that can accelerate this process beyond what we've seen. Because at this rate, we will never meet the SDGs, right?
Well, I mean, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and we really, really hope that the synergy build up, and especially the learning society gets expanded. And going forward to our platform as well, we would like to connect your learning societal experiences to the learning societies over there as well. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation today. It's been a big topic. It's going forward, like Chris has been talking about. We need to have a speed to engage this thing because we're already being behind about this. But let's catch up and hopefully join hands together. Thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned, and we will keep connected with Chris and his communities and keep creating a world a better place.
Thank you.